So then, we are back with more understandings from the Renewed Covenant, from the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of old, from the time of Israel, indicating the time of the end and also the completion of the spring feast, not very popularly known these days because people are not aware of the times and the seasons. And most of the copies of the scriptures are from the Greco-Romans, and unfortunately they did not translate properly. Though they had some understanding of the divine, but they used this document unfortunately to control the people and to deceive them, and that's why then they translated what was then convenient at the time. But then we understand from the Hebraic scripture the many other prophecies related with the end of time, so then we can trace those back, and obviously then the Greco-Romans, they were not aware of the previous covenant and its contents related with the second tabernacle services. They thought those were simply prophecies from the point of their generation until the end, without any link of the previous covenant because the completion thereof. Unfortunately, they were mistaken, and these days then where most of these prophecies can be easily placed in their proper layer, so then people can understand what's coming in the future. Then during the time of Yirmiyahu, the prophet of Israel, there was then a period of time when the Babylonians then they were coming, and then the nation would be in captivity for 70 years, because the nation, unfortunately, of the 490 years they owned the land, they never had the yearly Shabbat. And at the time then the Babylonian king was coming, it was then nearly the time where the land should rest for 70 years, and that's why they went to their exile. And then Yirmiyahu was very smart. He knew the prophecies, and he also knew that the government of his time was very disobedient. They were engulfed by huge amounts of power. They thought they were in control, and unfortunately they were not. So then Yirmiyahu explains the situation before the king and before the priests of the time, and unfortunately Yirmiyahu was then rejected. He said not to fight against the king of Babylon because he would take over the country, and they refused to listen to him. And sure enough, then Babylonian king, they came, his people came, and first, second, and third times, then the nation was leveled. The city was then done away with. So then these days we begin to have a reference what power can cause in the nation when they are blind and they are not aware of Yahweh's plan. The records, they indicate every time the nation of Israel was then involved with a king and then power and then relations with other countries without the understanding of the prophets of Yahweh, then the nation always got themselves in trouble. No exception. You can read every time you find that when there is a king and then they don't understand the prophecies of Yahweh, always they get in trouble. So then these days where then most of the world is going through a radical change because the holy cities are returning, then it's very easily understandable why then Daniel was explaining of the country of the time of the end. And he was also speaking of the countries also, as some of them being weak, some of them being strong. As we understand, China is a country that has a strong economy. And we should never believe their lies, stating that their economy then is weakening, because it's a lie. What is weakening is our relationship with them as trade goes on. But in terms of the trades of the rest of the world with them is absolutely growing up. But then we are mesmerized by power and might, and we are not being wise in our decisions. And as we read the Revelation, the 8th chapter, then you find the third part of the ships comes from the area of Asia, where then Shaliach Shaul had the first startings with his circuitry of preaching and teaching to the people. So then his people would cluster and the Gentiles would be shepherded. At the end, the very country that started out with the understanding of Ruach HaKodesh is the same country around the area where then they're going to be taking over the trades of the world at the end. 10 chapters later you find in every country on earth doing trade with China. They can't avoid it because these was already predicted. Mostly because of computerized systems. As we understand, there are many distinct systems for banking and then for investments and then for trade, and those are going to be combined. That's why China is going to be the leader of the ANS market, because we don't have this ability of combining those, but they already have the system in place. They are only waiting for the proper time. In other words, when we break our economy. Because we should never fight against China, but should be with them along with their decisions. And so far we are fighting against them, and we are going to get ourselves in trouble. So then we understand from the time of Yirmiyahu, he was explaining, don't fight against the king of Babylon. It's not worth it. There it is. Came the first time, then they tried to recuperate, came the second time, then they tried to recuperate, the third time he came and he leveled. Power is always dangerous, because a person can always think, can go above, and can do a bit more, though there is no record of doing any other action that is new from the past, always using old tactics, never worked, but then they try it again. Every time gets busted. And the prophecies are indicating there is a country leader of the end. We should make friendship with this power and not go against it. The best is making easy payments and then retrieving our military from the world's scenario, so then the Chinese can take on their trade partnership with other nations, so then they can introduce trade via peace. That's why Chinese, they have a vast, the most powerful military in the planet to enforce trade. We are not even imagining how powerful their military is. We are absolutely oblivious. We are for so long blind with mighty and high that we have no idea anymore. And then Yirmiyahu was very clear to don't fight against these people. Yirmiyahu, he knew he was speaking the truth. Yet the nation, they try to do on their own. So then, the options are given, and Yahweh is not forcing, but he is certainly showing what is the truth.